Scan Pro Video brings you a series of webinars focusing on the latest Blackmagic design products and information. This session is hosted by technical sales specialist Chris Javin from Blackmagic Design, and he'll be delving into web broadcasting and the A10 Mini Pro family.
So today we are going to be looking at web broadcasting. There's been a real interesting shift in the types of productions being made and the delivery methods for live production content over the last couple of years. It's led to the development of products like the A10 Mini range, and that's kind of going to be the focus of today. So we're going to touch on web broadcasting as a whole. We're going to look at it as a market and how it's developed, and then we're going to show you how our products, and especially the new A10 Mini range, are going to fit into that ecosystem and type of production. So just going through the agenda, this is what we're going to look to cover today. So we're going to go into the web broadcasting trajectory. We'll take a quick look at that and the interaction between content creators and audiences. We'll then look at the influencing factors. So we'll discuss some of the factors that have helped define and ground the web broadcast arena, and obviously being a very live and competitive, exciting market. We're then actually going to go into a practical where I'm going to actually go into the A10 software, and I've got an A10 Mini Pro with me here, and I'm just going to give you some really cool tools and tips on some really relevant features within the A10 switcher range, and how to effectively use them within your productions. And then just before we go to the Q&A, we'll look at some BMD solutions and workflows. So a closer look at the A10 switcher family range and how to combine BMD solutions and online platforms for production at any size and at any level. So to start us off, we're going to look at the trajectory of web broadcasting. So it's a very large market that has massively grown in popularity over the last 15 years. Thanks to internet technology and the revolution initiated by video sharing, social media and OTT over-the-top content platforms. It's now evolved into so many forms and accessible from so many devices, which makes it difficult to imagine the paradigm of communication without it. So Blackmagic Design offers a broad range of products which can fit perfectly into these markets. Our solutions span from acquisition sources to signal distribution, passing through processing hardware and software, with the aim of facilitating the delivery of high quality content while preserving and enhancing the creative intent. Each of the applications you can see in this slide use very similar components, if not the same, from source to destination, and we will come back to them. So again, our products can be used, for a multitude of different applications, but it may just be that either connectivity is a little bit different, or they have used it in an ecosystem that is a bit more unique in how it's delivered, or the type of feeds coming in, or things like that. So web broadcasting 2021, we've worked relentlessly to offer you this new range within the last year, obviously even under the current circumstances, which has proved difficult for many, but we really hope that the hard work we've put in has really helped for people to look at new avenues and ways of working, and also produce some real good quality content. The pandemic has really shaken up the AV industry, as I'm sure you're all aware, and it's represented a turning point or potentially a shift in people's careers. Some of you may have taken the time to actually reflect on your options, reshape in front of the challenges that you are now faced. Obviously, we've got working from home, smart working, remote attendance, like today, as striking examples of the new way of collectively working and partaking in private or public events. The sudden spike in these activities has reinforced that need for remote and affordable solutions. So talking about remote access and locations, although beneficial to some, being in a dedicated or prime location is no longer a must for many. The nature of programs and coverage, as well as the multiplication of events, requires productions to expand and contract in different ways and areas, and adapt rapidly to the constantly changing circumstances, meaning that it is imperative to invest wisely on time, resources, and equipment. We are glad and fortunate to say neither the pandemic or the fast-changing nature of this market have prevented us from being extremely responsive to our customer needs, and our developers and engineers strive to deliver products and features of outstanding quality. This can be very evidently seen in our most recent product release. So let's identify some of the influencing factors in the web broadcasting market, which is obviously boomed, especially within the last year, but also over the last 10 to 15 years, there has been a real shift into this very exciting market. So for the larger majority of productions, this can be traced back to either a profit, a service, or a hobby activity. We're aware that some of you already involved in this business. This will just be a reminder of why and potentially how you decided to make your move. But for people new to this, it can represent the beginning of a new challenge, which requires some planning and strategic thinking. So whether you start from a blank canvas or you're looking at reshaping your current production workflow, it's important to set out your intentions and find out which of the following aspects need to be established, built, or maintained in order to define your digital engagement with your audience. So only after drawing a clear picture can we match those aspects to a subset of tools that our solutions offer. And we will show them, some of them practically later on when we deep dive into the practical ATEM tools and tips section. So recognition is one of the hardest things to achieve in a busy market, especially if you're trying to get started or stand out from the crowd. But the ATEM range, which we will see shortly, offers tools and features that can make you instantly recognizable. A great example being things like logos and titles. Making impact through creativity is yet another crucial aspect to successful audience engagement and an overall better experience for all. This could be achieved by layering animated graphics, lower thirds, keys, and picture-in-pictures, which help to diversify your communication style, making it more striking and appealing. Building reputation relies on quality and consistency of your content throughout different platforms. And our webcast solutions give you the necessary confidence to broadcast your program fulfilling industry quality standards. Some of our models let you record all your sources and program while still streaming live, so that you can even repurpose your content for subsequent editing and uploading, adding those extra bits to promote your production and showcase your creativity, and even go as far as to remaster into higher resolutions depending on the setup. So when your service or production has the potential to catalyze an audience, we need to make sure that it has enough reach. This can be achieved by casting a larger net through a variety of platforms, neither online or via a traditional broadcast infrastructure. This requires an understanding of the delivery and networking options offered by the chosen solutions. Some of the ATEM mini models, in fact, include onboard video encoders, direct streaming, as well as optional conversion and signal distribution accessories to suit all workflows. So BMD has always been at the forefront of the media technology industry, and we've strived to bring affordable products to market that allow for creative people to do more of what they love. There are some aspects that are common in all our product range, and they represent the backbone of our solutions, those designed for web broadcast applications like the ATEM family range. So accessibility, this is something that really drives us as a company. It's one of the founding ethoses, and it's basically to make products at a price that make them accessible and allow creatives to produce high quality, engaging content. This is shown in our recent additions to the ATEM range, listening to customer feedback, and now having 5 different ATEM minis in the family, allowing for access for all budgets and different types of productions. Usability, so we've got a compact form factor as well as a real clear and simple button layout within the ATEM mini range. It allows these units to sit discreetly in several different production environments and keep the main function controls at your fingertips. So whether you're self-operating and managing your presentation or catering a simple solution for somebody else to help you with, no task should be too daunting here. We tend to use the same applications and menus in our products. As such, the ATEM control software is used for the whole ATEM range. So if you know how to use one, it can be really easy to scale up and start to use bigger, larger switches. Again, with that software that runs throughout. And again, that can be seen in a lot of our product range with our cameras using the Blackmagic OS operating system for the menu systems. So reliability and quality. So the signal integrity is well preserved from source to destination, and it's in really good hands. In fact, the ATEM minis process audio and video feeds with the same precision as our top of the range broadcast switches, with the addition of great onboard encoding quality and recording options optimized for the most popular live streaming applications and platforms. Scalability. So most, if not all, of our products are designed to ease that future expansion and addition to your systems, giving you a clear upgrade path. Again, as we use open standards and common technologies within our products, you're not locked into a given ecosystem. And this is something we pride ourselves on, is this flexibility and scalability to add and grow, contract and expand for different productions. So now what we're going to do is where we're going to actually show you the software and the product. So again, I'm using the A10 Mini Pro here, and we will go into the software and I'll show you some neat little tools and tips for how you can start to use some of the really beneficial features within the A10 Mini range. So before we do that, I'm just going to give you an idea of my setup. So the setup is fairly simple. In its center, like I said, we've got the A10 Mini Pro. It manages all of our sources and will create an output, which is commonly referred to as your program out. And that is essentially what your spectators or audience are going to see. So I'm currently using the USB-C output to give software control and handle the stream that you guys are all seeing through Zoom. And this is very likely how people would use it in that typical web conference or webinar event via a platform like Skype or Zoom. So I only have these two sources at the moment. So I'm working with a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K in front of me, and then I'm bringing in my presentation from my laptop via HDMI. But adding other sources is super easy. Again, the real benefits of the A10 Mini range is it being very plug and play. And if I wanted to, I could obviously add another two sources, one being a PC. If, for example, I wanted to add another PC feed coming in, the A10 will actually negotiate with that PC and automatically choose its output resolution based on what the A10 Mini can do. And that would be the same for a console. So you can set how the PC HDMI output behaves, and you can either set it, as I'm doing at the moment, as an extended monitor, or you can mirror your main screen output. And yeah, that's essentially how the A10 is working with that HDMI. And again, I can arrange my screens to allow me to do a lot of different things within my computer to obviously what the A10 is actually seeing as the feed coming in. Connecting camera is just as easy, provided the HDMI output of the camera is not higher than 1080p 60. Again, remember the A10 Mini range, that is the ecosystem you're working in. It is a 1080p up to 60 frames a second sort of ecosystem within all the A10 Mini range. Once you do that and that camera's plugged in, again, obviously not being a high resolution than that 1080p 60, it will appear pretty much instantly on that multi-view. And again, just an idea, my multi-view is just over to my right here. A great feature of the A10 Mini range are the internal standards conversions on all of those inputs, which means it can convert pretty much any PC or broadcast resolution to match the main program resolution, which I will show you where that is set when we go into the software. This means that you don't necessarily have to replace everything in your setup or to buy new gear for your studio, since the A10 is so flexible with the sources that it's able to accept. So if you have an old camera that only does 720p, no problem. Again, that will work, and you can either look to upscale that to your main resolution set as a higher resolution within the A10, or work at 720 and bring everything else coming in down to that base 720 resolution. And that's another great aspect of the A10 Minis and generally with our products. They allow you to scale your production and grow your setup depending on your needs and budget. So you could start with older action cameras as your main cameras, for example, and then when your audience grows and your reach becomes larger, it may be that you want to up that production value. And again, you can start to look into some higher end cameras to help raise that production value. Okay, so we are now just going to nip into software mode. So just give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to change my screen mirroring so that you guys are able to see the software. Okay, I'm just going to knock my picture-in-picture down to there, but everyone should now be able to see the A10 control software here. So to give you an idea of what this is actually doing, this is a remote control application. So all the processing is done internally with the A10. So the A10 Mini is doing all the heavy lifting here, and this is just a remote in application that allows me to set a lot of the settings that can be very crucial in the initial setup. And then when you're working with more sort of advanced features like picture in pictures, upstream keys and downstream keys, this is where you'll be able to set a lot of that stuff. So what I'm going to do first is just give you a tour of the software, and I'm just going to touch on some really key areas to be looking at when you're initially setting this stuff up. So first is bottom left, you've got a settings cog down here, and that's where you're going to set your project resolution. So essentially what everything will be working towards on input when you're bringing things into the A10. You've then got an audio page, a multi-view page where you can start to adapt your multi-view if you want to come up with a more unique setup for that. Your labels, so again, if you want to start labeling bits, you can see down here, comp and cam1 are actually linked in my previewing program there. So again, just gives you a much better visual reference of what is on those inputs. And then you've got a hyperdeck. So again, if you want to control any hyperdecks, either for recording or bringing in VT, that can be done. And then your remote with the RS422 control can be set up there. So looking at the software, so I'm just going to stick in the switcher tab here. So you can see on the bottom, we do have 4 tabs. So in the switcher tab, I'm just going to move from left to right, and we've got your program and preview on this far left-hand side. Now you can see if I was to give a hard cut to my cam1, that is what you're seeing, because again, when we change our program on this point, and again, it can be done on the A10 Mini itself, you're actually doing a hard cut of that program. So again, what is being shown on the output is being cut when you're doing that within your program. If you're wanting to use the preview, what that allows is to be able to load up that next angle. So a really good visual way. And again, using your multi-view to check that out, you're able to load in your next input and able to see what's going on either on that camera angle, computer coming in, or games console. And then obviously it gives you a much nicer point for switching and just for confidence in what is happening within that angle. You've then got some black and your different colored color generators. So again, if I just hard cut, you can see that's the colors that are currently set up. Color bars and black, and then back to comp. And again, you all have them on the preview as well. So if you want to load them up into your preview, and again, if I just cut back in here, there's my preview monitor. So at the moment, that is what my multi-view to my right-hand side here is seeing. So I've got preview left program, my MacBook Pro, the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, obviously 2 non-inputs there with nothing coming in. Then you've got media player, a stream status, record status, and audio status. So some real key visuals there to be looking at. You've then got transition styles and things for adding keys on air and previewing keys. So here is where you can change your transition style down at the bottom. So you've got mix, dip, wipe, and DVE, and again, auto or cut. And this can be done from the A10 Mini Pro itself. So you've got your auto cut buttons there, and you can change durations directly on the unit as well. So for example, if I was in mix and I hit auto at the minute, it's going to fade to my camera. And again, you can see there preview and program. So preview is now my comp. So if I was to auto back to that, it's going to obviously switch them over. And you do notice that both are red for the brief moment where they're both on screen. You then also have the fader bar, and that's a manual way to obviously switch between your preview and program. And then to the right-hand side of that, you have your DSK, so your downstream key, where you can add it for preview, put it on air, and also auto transition it on and off. And below that is your fade to black. So that is kind of either your start or end point to allow for a really easy way of either fading everything up from black or fading everything down. And again, that's a really good thing because it means that everything is being faded down. So for any reason you do have some complex keys overloaded and some titles, graphics, logos, it means that all that is going to come down together to finalize a real nice end point. So on the right-hand side of the switcher tab, you've got your palettes, media player, and output. So color generators, there's my color 1 and 2, which you saw me add on before, and that's where you can obviously set those. Upstream keyer, there's all your upstream keyer settings, so luma, chroma, pattern, and DVE. Transitions, downstream key, and fade to black. And again, this is where you'll find some crucial settings to be setting those up. I'm going to dive into them in a little bit of detail soon. Media player, that's where you can see a reference of what's coming in through the media player. And again, I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail very soon. And again, hyperdeck, whatever hyperdeck you have attached. Output, really key part. This is where you're going to set your live stream and your record stream. So again, if I was wanting to go to YouTube and bob myself in my streaming key and then go on air, that is a real easy way to obviously start to stream live to a multitude of platforms. And then you've got record stream. So again, this is going to be where you start to set your drive recording through that USB-C output, whether it be just the program output on the A10 Mini Pro or the ISO, which will allow for all input recording, as well as your program output, as well as all the other amazing things that you get with that. Capture video, capture still, and timecode generator. So media page, this is where you load in your media for your library. So you've got 20 slots of media potential, and you can see already I've got two little titles just loaded in there. And it is as simple as literally drag and drop. So there's just a Blackmagic Design JPEG logo, and it is just literally drag off the desktop and drop it in. Audio, this is where you've got a lot of control of your audio. And again, I'm going to go into this in more detail, but I just wanted to give you a quick flick through of all the tabs. And then the final one is camera. And this is where you get camera control with our cameras. And again, my Pocket Cinema Camera 4K will go into a bit more detail there of the cool stuff that we can do to set that camera up. Okay, so the first thing I want to go into, a nice little feature, and it goes back to the media library and the stuff that was loaded in there. And I'm just going to look at creating some basic titles and adding in some basic titles. So the first one I've got loaded in here, and to load it into my active media player, and again, this has got one media player on the A10 Mini Pro, I drag and drop that. That is now active in my media player. So anytime I want to be using media player one, that is what will be active within there. So what I'm going to do to add this title on is I'm going to go into my palettes and into my downstream key. Now, what I want to be doing is setting the fill source to media player one. So again, what is coming through on this title is going to be what I've loaded into media player one there. And just to give you an idea of what this one is you can kind of see it's red text, but it's actually on a black background, that is. So it's a constant color black background, and it was just something I created quickly in Keynote. So what I would want to do is set that to media player one, and then my key source, I want it to key out all that black. So that's the thing that I want the A10 to look at and remove to allow me to then overlay this. So if I was to bob that on there, you can see now that that has come up as a title. And what I'm going to do is just click to camera one, and then you can see it a little bit better. Now, obviously, it's not the most ideal title because we've just done red text on a black background, keyed out that black, and it's not really created a nice punchy title that is really clear on screen. So what A10 is really good at, and it's a really cool feature, is that it understands transparency. So if we were to create something with an alpha layer, so a transparent layer within that graphic, the A10 can actually read that and obviously key that out really quick and easily and give you a real good quality key on that. So that's what we're going to do. So this is a title that has been created on a transparent background. Again, it shows up as black because the A10 is referencing that as just a clear background. And obviously the black is just kind of behind that as a standard. But what we're now able to do, and if I go into my switcher, you can see that that title has already just come straight on online because I've got my downstream key on air and I've changed that in the media player. So it's literally used the same settings as we used before, but it's just loaded that one in and then keyed out the black. Now, obviously in there was quite a bit of black in the title itself. And obviously we're on an alpha layer, so we're on a transparent layer. So what we actually want to do is actually tell the A10 that we want to actually key out the keyed area. So what is already an alpha channel needs to be removed. And as I click that, you should see that that title becomes a lot more bold, a lot more recognizable. And again, the Blackmagic logo, which had black in it, has now become a lot more visible on screen. So two really easy ways to get some titles on. And again, they were just created in Keynote, really quick and simple. And another thing that the ATEM has is that if you do have Photoshop installed on your machine, when you install the software control, it will actually add a Photoshop plugin. And what that does is now from Photoshop, you are able to live export into our control software. So if you are creating some high-end titles, graphics within Photoshop, you can actually export it now directly into the library. So as you're seeing here, you can basically tell it which slot you want it to go into, and you can even say go into that slot and also activate directly into that media player. So again, if you're wanting to do some on the go quick changes to graphics or adding in graphics, and you've got some separated machines, so you've got, you know, that kind of potential, you could obviously then just send that directly into the media player and go live with that title. So I'm now going to touch on the upstream key. So that was all in the downstream key. And again, just to give you an idea, the downstream key is normally used for logos and titles because it's something that will always be overlaid over everything else. So again, think of it as a stream in the sense of if you are working upstream, you're doing things that are potentially going to filter down to that downstream. Anything downstream is going to overlay over everything that has happened upstream. Very quick explanation there. So we're going to go into the upstream key now, and I'm going to show you some really cool features within here. The first being chroma key. So at the minute you can see, and I'm going to go into how this was set up, but you can see my picture-in-picture is live on screen at the moment. The A10 Mini Pro has one upstream key within it. So if I go into my chroma, it is actually going to take that off air. Now, what I'm going to do is take it off air first, because again, remember what we did with the titling before in the downstream keyer. When the downstream keyer is active and on air, if I make changes to the media player, it's going to come straight through. So if I was to go into my chroma with my picture-in-picture active, i.e. on air, which you can see here, it's going to change it and add it straight in on air. So really, I want to get rid of that. So my picture-in-picture is now removed. I'm going to go into the chroma tab. And then what I want to do is load in my media that I want to chroma key. So this image here, I'm going to load in. And to give you an idea of what I've done here, this is a headshot of me that was shot recently while I've got this terrible lockdown haircut. Shot on a white background, and what we were able to do in Keynote is you can create an alpha layer, basically, and essentially key all of that out and create an alpha backdrop. So that's what I did. So I literally just alpha keyed out the background, and then I added in a block of that green color that you can see when I load this one up. And again, the great thing there is I know that color is consistent throughout. So it's going to be a real nice and easy one to select that chroma key picker to obviously key out all of that green. So I'm going to load that into my media player and then go back to my switcher tab. So what I'm going to do now is click down to my chroma sample. And what this does is, because I've loaded it into my media player and set that as my fill source, that has now activated that in my preview screen. And as you see, as I'm rolling this round, it's actually looking at that. So there's me, there's my black shirt, there's my face and my hair. And then as I go right or left, you can see it's picking up that green. And again, I really don't need to look at a large range here to be taking that, because I know that green is a consistent color. If it is that this was a green backdrop and I was lighting this, it may well be that you want to raise that. So just open up that range and take a larger range for that to look at. And again, that should help make the keyer a little bit better and sharper. So once that's done, I've set that to my key. So now the A10 Mini knows that is the part I want to key out. So I can then come out of that. And there we go. So you can see in the bottom right, it's keyed it and it's actually added a flying key. So if I just get rid of that, you can see that. So that is taken out, obviously, the green that I've set within my chroma sample here, and obviously taking it down. So what I'm just going to do quickly is cut over to here, bring that back online. And then I'm going to go just quickly down to my flying key. And again, maybe I will just cut back and bring that back on just so you can see what it is I'm doing. So my flying key settings here, I'm actually able, so again, so if I was to take that off, it just keeps it as full screen, exactly how it's shown up in the media player. Hit the flying key, and then I can start to move this around. So if I wanted to size it up, and then raise it up and just have this as kind of like a bottom right image that I'd keep on screen all the time or something like that. That's where I can do all of that. And again, if I wanted to make any adjustments, I can add contrast to the image again, just to make it pop over the top, some saturation, brightness, or what have you. Okay, so that's a real simple and easy way to obviously chroma key, and remember that what's been done in here is actually it's an advanced chroma key, so it's brought down from our top of the range models and now within this A10 mini range. So it's a really advanced and powerful chroma key that's inbuilt here, and you can see you've got flare suppression, spill suppression, and again, I believe that was down to when we had the acquisition of Ultimat. A lot of that technology has now been brought down into our A10 range of switches. So going back to DVE, this is where we set that picture in picture. And because I've gone in and I've changed some of the settings within position and size and source, it's actually brought that into my DVE. So what I can do is obviously I could just look to reset stuff, but on my A10 Mini Pro, I actually have some buttons for functionality of my picture in picture. And when I go around and change them, it will basically always go back to this standard, which is set for any picture in picture. What I can do, obviously, you can see here is I can size that up. So again, if I wanted to change that picture in picture, make it half the screen, 3/4 of the screen, anything like that, you can do that within a floating window. But do remember, anytime you then go onto the unit and select whether you want it top left, top right, or bottom left, it will reset to that standard size and position. Okay, so I'm now just going to take a quick look into some of the other tabs. So we touched on it before. This is the media library again, so where you can start to load in some graphics titles, still graphics titles here, and then obviously add them into your media player and start working in the switcher page with them. The audio page, and this is obviously really powerful and quite a new addition within our software control as to the extent of what we can now do with our audio. And again, it's stuff that's come in from our Fairlight sort of software. And you've now got a 6-band parametric EQ in there. You've also got dynamics where you can set expander gates, compressor limiters. You can see there, I've just done a little tweaking with my audio coming in to add that limiter to hopefully make sure that I don't start blowing people's eardrums, and obviously make sure that what I am broadcasting is of a broadcast safe quality. Below that is where you're able to add gain to certain microphones. So again, I've pushed this microphone a little bit just to get the best sound possible. And below that, you can see here's where you can basically set whether you want your audio to be on. So I've just set this mic to be on. So anytime I'm cutting between different inputs, so to my computer or whatever, it is just working with this microphone as the solid input throughout for my program output. If I wanted to set audio follow video, that means that anytime I cut, it would then cut to the microphone on that input. So again, if I had another camera coming in with a microphone on someone else, and I wanted every time I cut to obviously be picking up that microphone and taking away this microphone, AFV is going to allow for that in a real seamless way. You've then got mic 1 and mic 2, which is your 3.5mm inputs on the A10 Mini Pro itself. And here you can actually add delay for those inputs. So if it is you're running out to an audio mixer and then bringing it in, you have some delay options there if for any reason you need to sync things up. And then finally, I'm going to look at the camera tab. And my Cam 1 is my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 4K. And what you can do here instantly, you can see is if I work with my lift, I can start to change the color of this camera. And if I wanted some more critical settings of that lift gamma gain with contrast, hue, saturation, RGB as well, if you just click this little expander icon here, that's where you see a full view of your 3 color wheels. Lift being your darkest shadows, gamma being your midtones, and gain being your highlights. And again, it will start to affect a lot of the image, but it will certainly be starting to look more within the shadows, the midtones, or the highlights, depending on lift, gamma, or gain, whatever's selected there. You then have gain of the camera, which is going to be your ISO, your shutter, and your white balance. So again, all remote controlled directly from the software. You then have iris control. So you can start to see, I'm going to start going really bright and then back down to quite dark. So that is just literal iris settings within the camera. And again, just making sure I'm back up to an all right setting there. Got focus control. So you can start to see I am now pretty badly out of focus. You actually have down here an autofocus push one button. So if I click that, camera's just going to get a nice quick autofocus. And again, if you're in a position like me here, where you are delivering content on your own and your camera is in front of you, that is a really nifty feature and has been very beneficial for me to be setting focus for that. You then have zoom controls if you're working with a motorized zoom lens that works with this remote control. So depending on what that is, you might have that zoom control of that as well. And obviously you've got this for potentially however many inputs that you're working with within there. Okay, back to the switch page, and I'm just going to touch on the fact that obviously the outputs on the A10 Mini Pro, you've got one HDMI output and one USB-C output. Obviously, the A10 Mini Extremes, you're actually working with two HDMI outputs that are auxiliary outputs and two USB-C outputs on there as well. Okay, I'm now going to just dip back into presentation mode. So yeah, we should be back up on there. Okay. Okay, so now I'm just going to go through some solutions and workflows. Our product family is vast, and although we might have solutions for a number of different customers, it might be challenging for somebody to identify the product range, let alone the model that can fit in their workflow. Therefore, it's beneficial to take you through some of our key products that could help you get you started, potentially scale up, and eventually take your production to the next level. So whilst live streaming applications all differ and are used for different purposes and have different target audiences, they do all share four core components, which we can categorize as such. Video source or sources. So this includes things like cameras, computer outputs, media players, and essentially is the video content that we want the audience to see. You've then got your capture device or interface. This defines the hardware used to connect the video source into the computer for streaming. Your software layer or streaming engine. So that is the encoding of that video signal to a stream-friendly format. And that can either be done in software utilizing computer resources or in hardware. And so streaming platform, this is a service where the video is then going to be streamed to, such as conferencing, webinar, or live video applications. The size and number of products used will generally scale up as we progress from looking at web conferencing to webinars and then up to webcasting. And as we look at those different types of web broadcasting in more detail, we can see where each of the four components we've just outlined fit in. So a very simple setup first. So this first example shows the simplest form to go live, and it is the newly released Web Presenter HD, and it represents a single plug and play solution to bring an SDI source over USB-C or Ethernet. It features a professional hardware streaming engine for direct streaming via Ethernet directly into your streaming platform. Alternatively, you can take advantage of the UVC technology, which means that the software, for example, Skype or Zoom, will recognize the unit as a simple 1080p webcam source, exactly like I'm doing here through the A10 Mini Pro and Zoom. There's no drivers required for that, and it also offers the newly released update of tethering to mobile devices. So again, like the A10 Mini Pro and Extremes. And what that allows for is use of your mobile cellular data. So 5G or 4G network data is actually able to be used now from the A10 Mini Pro and Extremes to use for streaming. And that can create a really nice redundancy as well if you are using Ethernet for streaming. And obviously you want to have that fail safe and redundancy if for any reason anything was to go wrong. So basically with this setup, your web conference or presentation is going to be up and running within a couple of minutes, and even without a laptop if you were using that USB-C tethering through the mobile device. So going back to our A10 Mini, in this example, we can see a very basic setup in which a couple of sources are attached to the A10 Mini and connected via USB-C to a laptop. This is very similar to the Web Presenter initial example, but in this case, the unit is detected as a 1080p webcam source device with all the benefits of the mixing transitions and effects like picture-in-picture that we've just seen in action. Educational and training institutions, as well as esports, demand very, very similar setups to this. So the next example really shows a good use of the A10 Mini peripheral connections. Here, the USB-C is used for external SSD recording, the Ethernet port for streaming and to control the unit, and the 3.5mm jack analog input, which is both mic and line level for additional external audio sources coming in. This is great for a live stream production with the intent of the subsequent repurpose of the contents, thinking about training tutorials, seminars, sport events, and highlights. An A10 Mini Pro ISO can in fact record all your sources and program and even generate a DaVinci Resolve project for you to jump straight into and get more creative. And there's no need, I don't think at this point, to talk about DaVinci Resolve and how powerful that is as an NLE editing software. So we've seen how easy it is to really get started with those easy but really powerful features. But we also know that you want to be ahead of the game, and you'll soon be asking, well, what's next? Where do I take it from here? How do I expand and grow my setup? So as mentioned earlier, by combining a number of additional products, you can build a very interesting workflow and diversify your services. In this example, we have introduced an A10 streaming bridge, which allows us to convert the A10 Mini Pro ISO Extreme Ethernet output to SDI or HDMI, either directly through a simple router, meaning that we can distribute that PGM signal, so that program signal, to a different site or area of a building by using a pre-existing Ethernet infrastructure, and then distribute it to other devices, perhaps another monitor, hyperdeck mini recorder, or an external encoder, all simultaneously. But we can also forward a port for the A10 streaming bridge to connect to the internet. That means that your program can now have a global reach. And perhaps this can become a remote feed for another A10 Mini Pro sitting in another location around the world. And you can duplicate this setup over and over again and basically start to create a global network of A10 Mini Pros. And obviously, you're going to get to a stage again where potentially looking at how you advance and how you start to progress, one big thing to look at will always be resolution. So there are more demanding productions that require to deliver in a higher resolution over the internet. And in this case, the example shows an IO device, the Ultra Studio Mini 4K, one of the many in our capture and playback family. And this allows you to capture that UHD program coming from the A10 Television Studio Pro 4K into your computer, in this case, a streaming software layer like OBS or Restream.io, where you can control many aspects of the incoming feed like bitrate, resolution, encoding, recording codec, and so on. And basically will create the gateway to your streaming platform. And again, allowing within this setup to work in at higher resolution. So again, a way of bringing that production value up and raising the game. So to conclude this section, we'd like to show you a matrix of the A10 Mini models, which we've been using throughout this presentation. We invite you to take a snapshot so you can refer back to it. And obviously, it will help when exploring our product page on our websites to have something like this at hand. I'm not going to discuss each single difference between these models, but you can clearly see at a glance how each of these models offer additional features to really fulfill some of your specific requirements. So I will just take my picture-in-picture off for a second if it is that anyone would like to take a little screenshot of that. Also have a little sip of water. Okay, back on. And yes, I'm just going to go into some use cases now. So where our products are sitting in real production environments. So to hopefully offer you some good context. So let's look at a few webcast and live streaming cases that really condense what it is that we've discussed so far. So broadcasters obviously are not new to this and have already adapted their offer to cover TV programs and live events so that you can access them on demand via smart platforms in exchange of either subscriptions, pass, or a license fee. One really notable one to start with is the Gadget Show. So the A10 Mini Pro helped the show stay on screens during lockdown. Usually the program is made with an OB truck and production team of 20 plus people. A key part of the show is for presenters to react to pre-recorded segments that have just been shown to the viewers. The A10 Mini Pro was used to throw the VTs, graphics and stings onto monitors around the studio, and it was also used to host Wallop of the Week, which is a segment that takes place on Zoom. Moving on to Darude, so the electronic dance music producer, and is also known as Darude and very famous for his classic banger Sandstorm, is using A10 Mini Pro and Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K to stream a weekly lockdown series online. So he uses Twitch as his preferred platform. The Finnish-based, internationally acclaimed artist established 3 weekly live streams, attracting more than 250,000 live views across 35 streams collectively since its launch in March. The highest single stream has attracted over 12k views alone, which I think we can all safely say is a really good reach. GBMC Healthcare System is a 342-bed medical centre that provides acute and subacute care, handling more than 23,000 admissions and 52,000 emergency room visits annually. In addition to the internal town hall meetings that they have, GBMC Healthcare System and Focal Point Productions also began streaming frequent Facebook Live sessions featuring clinicians and hospital leadership discussing very timely topics. And finally, Playing for Change, the organisation brings together a diverse mix of musicians from all musical genres performing in their local environment. Concerts are broadcast via the Playing for Change YouTube channel, which has more than 2 million subscribers. International Foundation was created to connect people through music and had been powered by the A10 Mini Pro and Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6Ks. And finally, in use cases, a real big one for us and one we're super proud of is the California-based nominees for this year's Emmy ceremony was streamed live into the telecast with kits built around the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K and the A10 Mini Pro. So the scope of the event was looking to do something really ambitious with more than 100 nominees and obviously very little margin for error. There was no issues with the systems. They all worked perfectly and created a really unique Emmys that was obviously streamed live from very, very different locations and bringing everyone together. And in that image, you can see how those kits were sort of built and tested. So one we're super proud of, and I think really shows the level that these products are now being used at. So obviously, don't forget, should you need more advice, our resellers are always available to discuss your alternatives, and our website is always kept up to date with the latest news announcements, as well as manuals, FAQs, and updates. We've been through a long journey today, and we've discussed a number of topics regarding web broadcasting and the live streaming market. We've given you a picture of why this is so important and relevant now more than ever. And we've also offered our advice on how you could approach this as a business and select the right tool for it based on your goals. Then we've seen practical examples on how to use those amazing features that you can find in our A10 family range. And we've concluded on a little overview that shows some really interesting uses and production designs to either get you started or expand and grow your current setup in this very exciting marketplace. But we're obviously always here to listen. And therefore, what we're going to do now is open up the floor to a Q&A session to respond to some of your questions. Just a quick one. Also, if it is after this, you've still got questions and you want to get in touch with us, please feel free to email us at the pre-sales email address, which is presales-emea@blackmagicdesign.com. Thank you very much for your time today, and we will now kick into Q&A mode.
Thank you so much for that, Chris. It's massively appreciated. There's been quite a lot of questions actually flying in on the chat, and I've made a note of them. Special thanks to Michael in the chat, who's obviously an A10 Mini owner, and throwing out a lot of answers as we go through them. But I think
has he been answering all the questions?
Oh, he's been doing a great job of it. So amazing. I'm still going to raise a couple of ones that came up, just so everyone is aware of them if they've not been keeping their eye on chat. So the first question was the Photoshop plugin. Someone's asked if you can do the same with a different application called Affinity Photo.
It's not something that we've got built in. So again, just to give you an idea of that Photoshop plugin, that will directly install if Photoshop is present on your computer. And I think my fire alarm's just gone off. Yeah, so that will basically just upload straight into Photoshop if it's present on your computer when the software control is downloaded. But we don't feature any other support for any third-party apps direct from that install straight away. Obviously, I mean, with Photoshop, the way around it always used to be you just export it from Photoshop, bring it in manually. What we've done is obviously made that more seamless and efficient by giving that direct export into the media library. But at the moment, that's where we're at with that.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, no, that's great to know. So Sadiq's also pointed out Affinity does support Photoshop plugins, so it might work. But it's also worth pointing out that the SDK is there as well, so people are able to develop their own plugins for things like that if they want to. So the next question we got was, when will the Web Presenter HD be available in stock or shipping? I don't know if there's any sort of time frame available for that.
It's a good question. To be honest, I had thought. Yeah, the web presenter I think is currently on back order. I'm not 100% if products are shipping at the moment. That is something that I would need to double check with our sales admin team. But feel free to get in touch with us directly, or obviously Alistair at Scan. He will be able to obviously work with our sales admin team and see when that stock is about to arrive. But like with a lot of our products, the orders have gone through the roof. But yeah, hopefully they shouldn't be too far off, I don't think.
No, that's great. The other question, and this is the one that I saw sort of Michael having a good crack at, was someone asked, can I use the ATEM Mini with OBS and with Zoom webinars, and how you would go about broadcasting a mix of live and pre-recorded content via Zoom webinars? Or can I use the ATEM Mini to stream live and pre-recorded content without something like OBS?
I mean, so yeah, you can obviously stream and record at the same time. What you would need to do for that is, if you're using the A10 Mini Pro, where you've obviously got one USB-C output, you would use the USB-C output to record to your SSD drive, and then you would need to be going into your network via Ethernet to be setting up that stream. So again, where I showed in the output settings within the A10, obviously if I'm running USB-C like I am now into Zoom, I'm not setting that in my output palette. So again, I could actually use the USB-C to come into Zoom, and then I could also stream via the network using that output setting within the control software and direct it to your RTMP platform like Facebook, YouTube, or whatever. And again, you've got the A10 Mini Extremes that has the two USB-C outputs, and they can actually work independently. So you could actually go into two separate computers and do essentially the stream like I'm doing here through that webcam input, and go to two different platforms there, or use one to go to a platform and then one to record to SSD. So they are you very much have that capability within the system. It's just obviously it kind of then denotes how you will stream if it is that you want to use, for example, on the A10 Mini Pro, that one USB-C to record to SSD. It's obvious you're going to then need to go network based to obviously send out a stream to something like Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or whichever.
Yeah. And it ties into another question that came up, was asking about streaming to multiple platforms simultaneously. So how many can you stream to simultaneously?
Straight out the box, it is just one. So again, in that output, you would set YouTube or Facebook or Twitch. But there are obviously third-party platforms out there that will allow you to go in and stream to multiple platforms off the back of it, like OBS, Restream.io. They give you that potential to stream to multiple destinations. So if you're looking to do that from this unit, then I'd be looking to work with some of that third-party software.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Another question we had was someone who has an A10 Mini Pro. They've had a problem with the DHCP getting an IP address. It always seems that the A10 needs to reboot. Now, I know this probably isn't a question for you, but I think it's a good chance to introduce, I suppose the support side of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you've got any issues, in post-sale support, then please, do obviously email our support team. Their email address, just to get through to the main help desk, is support-emea@blackmagicdesign.com, and they'll be able to assist with anything like that. The great thing with those guys is that obviously they're set up in the office with a lot of the kit. So if you come through email with a issue or a connectivity problem or something like that, we're able to do that in the office to set that up and obviously test it and kind of give some really sort of well-educated answers on that setup and how it's done. But obviously feel free to get in touch wherever, and we can always direct you if you're having that issue. But those guys would certainly be the first port of call for anything sort of post-sales in that kind of environment.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think we've only got one or two more questions left. So someone's asked, are there any plans to introduce or to update the older A10 production studio models to introduce the Fairlight controls or the input scalers? My guess is that's a bit of a hardware limitation rather than a software limitation, but I'm not too sure off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'll be honest. As you'll know, Alistair, with Blackmagic, we rarely know what's in development. I honestly couldn't comment as to whether that will be something that is seen within those switches. So yeah, unfortunately, sorry, that is just the way of the world here, I'm afraid. But
I completely
it's a great point, and who knows.
No, I completely understand that, and having come from that world myself, and I know, and I guess one of the things I always tell people is, if there's something that you want to see in a product, that doesn't have to be Blackmagic. Generally, sort of any product, but this, Blackmagic are very good for it. Contact the support guys, contact you guys yourselves, Blackmagic, and just let them know your development team and your hardware engineers, they're really responsive when it comes to sort of squeezing everything they can out of a product. So those feature requests, you've just got to pass them on, I guess. You can't implement something if you don't know you need it.
Yeah, without a doubt, and we do get a lot of it. So and you can hopefully see with that new A10 Mini Extreme range, that has come from a lot of customer feedback, and we brought in some additions within that lineup now that hopefully has answered a lot of customer questions. So yeah, we're very much always listening to the customers. It's just very hard for us to know here on the ground what is in development. But yeah, please make sure you're always filtering that back to us because we really appreciate that.
Yeah, and the last one, which again I think we've pretty much got an answer to, but it's, if you use third-party streaming software for multiple sites, do you use resolution? Do you lose resolution? But I guess the answer to that would be it not from the ATEM directly. It depends on what the software itself is doing.
Yeah, I mean, within those types of software, you'll have the ability to obviously manage those settings. So obviously you'll be able to set all of that up. Your major limitation there will be your up and down speeds, and whether your up speed is enough to handle all of those separated streams simultaneously being directed to those different platforms. And again, there's loads of good stuff online for doing speed checks on your internet connection. So I'd always recommend doing that before you start to invest in, and that will sometimes negotiate where you actually start to do your productions and how many places you'll stream to. Or it might mean that the infrastructure is not good enough where you are, and you need to upgrade that first before you start to look at the product. So again, it's certainly a really good question, and something that I would say is really key in the initial setup of these type of systems, without a doubt.
For more information on any of the products and solutions mentioned in this webinar, contact the Pro Video team today. And you can also shop our Blackmagic design range at Scan Pro Video. If you haven't checked out our other sessions yet, then head over to the Pro Video YouTube channel and search Blackmagic Design Webinars. Thanks for watching.